Okay, so in part 2 of the logo design tips video, we want to cover the actual Nightwatch surveillance system logo build. Um, so again, the first thing we started with after a client interview is to sit down and do some research and try to find some elements or parts of an owl that we can incorporate into the logo. So as I was looking through this, I'm already starting to look at the shape of sorry, a bird in flight and to see whether or not that will work for my logo. And I think it might just be a little bit too detailed and a little bit too spread out to work with. So we can definitely take a standing owl, but because we're talking about watch, I want to really focus on the owl's expression. So I'm instead going to probably just focus on the face. Now, if you're looking at some of these logos or some of these owls, some of them are just a bit fancy. So we've got these ones. This one looks too innocent to me. This one looks way too surprised to have anything to do with surveillance systems. So I'm just going through here and looking at some things. This one's way too adorable. This is never going to work. But as I start looking, I kind of like these ones with this kind of overhanging V. Because it gives kind of a scowl look to it. So as I go through here, I see this one and I see a couple other ones that I'm going to draw some inspiration from. So then I go out and I start sketching a bunch of stuff in a notepad and get kind of a face that I think is going to work. And then what I usually do is I come into Illustrator, as you can see here, and I'll pull a couple of those inspiration images here and I'll set my notepad next to me and I'll try to recreate in vector what I was drawing in my notepad. Now, this is not always successful and you have to do it several times. And this one, just for the sake of getting this video out there, I only tried to do a couple of versions. So I started with this one and I thought it was going to be cool, and now it just looks like a mean girl owl. So anyway, I like what was happening here, but I don't necessarily like it for this logo. I wanted it to be a guy just because I think, in my opinion, it should be a guy logo. And mostly because the people in this company are men, or at least the owners are. So I can tweak this or whatnot, but I think we've got too many feminine curves, so to speak. And so eventually I ended up with this, and then their colors are this kind of owl yellow look with some dark charcoal gray. And so this worked perfectly with the owl logo because most owls have this yellow iris. So try to keep it a little bit simple. If you take some of the elements away, you can see that they don't necessarily work as well. And so it just took a process of, should I add this and how should I tweak this? And you can see I kept messing with this part of the eye here because sometimes it just made it look too mean and other times it made it look too feminine. So once we finally got to this point, this is simple enough. And I'm not saying that this is the best logo in the world, but it is simple. It has simple color and it's going to be easy for us to lay out, and it's unique. It's not something that I saw in any of the Google image searches. So even though I drew inspiration from all of that, this is something that we can claim for them is completely unique. So what we need to do is actually start building our logo. So I leave these illustrations alone. Some of these were made with strokes, and strokes do not reproduce well or resize well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold Alt and drag it down here, and now watch what happens when I try to resize it. See how everything gets super dark and black and thick because the strokes didn't resize in proportion to everything else like they should. So I'll undo that, and what I usually do is I'll highlight everything and go up to Object, Expand Appearance. So these are no longer strokes, it's just a shape that's filled with black. So now if I come here, I can group this, Object, Group, and I can make it a lot smaller, and it's still going to remain in proportion. So now I need to start building my elements. I need to pick a font that makes sense for this. So again, I'm going for a strong, masculine, high-tech looking font, and I want to be able to rearrange the elements so that it can sit in several different ways. So I'm not always stuck with one layout or one format. So going through here, I'm obviously not going to pick Jane Austen, because if I type Night Watch, even though that's a cool looking font, it doesn't make any sense for what I'm trying to design here. So if we go through, I think I picked Euro style for this. There we go. And I may or may not like that font as it is now. And actually, I think what I'm going to do is make everything all capital. So let's try that. All right, so that's a lot better. And we're in Night Watch bold, so we can try regular, and nope, I like it bold. But as we go through here, you'll notice a couple of things. The kerning, which is basically the spacing between the letters. See how it looks like these are practically touching, and then this is so far apart. So anytime I work with a logo or big heading text, I will always go back through and adjust the kerning. Now you could adjust the kerning by coming here, going to the character panel, and then adjusting the kerning here. But I think it's easier to do it on the fly by putting my cursor in here, holding the Alt or Option key, I always forget. Alt or Option key, and then the left or right arrow, and then I can nudge it one way or the other. So I'm trying to create an even gap between all of these and reduce a couple of them until they visually look like that same gap size. That's probably too far. So I can pull that one in a little bit, and I think that's okay. Maybe that one was a little too far. Okay, so once I think I've got it to where I want it, right now it's still a little bit disproportionate. The owl head is really big compared to it, so I can make it a lot bigger and grab my grouped owl head and kind of adjust it that way. Now, I think this is super dark. There are some black elements in here, but maybe I want to change it to the dark gray, and that's starting to feel a little bit better to me. And then we still have to include surveillance systems, but if I type surveillance systems, it's way too big. So what do? Well, here's a couple of tricks that you can do. First of all, we can make it a lot smaller, and you can in fact do that, and that's going to be okay. It still seems like this is too prominent to me. So what I'm actually going to do is change this to regular Euro style, so that they're automatically going to coordinate because they're both Euro style, and I will make that a lot smaller. And I could leave it like that and that would be absolutely fine, but I do want to change to this lighter gray color. That's even better. And now when I come back in here, I can go to this tracking, and let's just type 300, and that's basically going to add more space between each of the letters for the entire phrase or both words, and then just stretching them out so that they perfectly align on the left and the right. That's going to make it a lot easier to work with this logo, because now what we have going is an implied rectangle that we can kind of design elements around. So that could definitely be my logo. In addition, if I make this artboard a lot bigger, we can show a couple of different options. So we'll go ahead and do that one, and then we can alt drag that, and maybe just one option we're gonna just we're gonna move that over. Okay, so those are two different options. Let's see, we can maybe do this one where, there we go, Night Watch surveillance system. So maybe this has 100 tracking, and maybe it's a lot bigger. But then this leaves a good space for our owl logo. So as you can see, if you can make it so that your logo has kind of a Lego building block feel to it, so that people can change things around and move things around to fit what they need, and so that it's not always boring and the same exact thing every single time, then you're going to be a lot better off and it's going to be a lot more versatile. So there's a lot of other things I could do. I could even maybe rearrange things completely so that maybe our owl is up here, and then we have this one here. See, that one's a little bit harder because the proportions aren't working, but it is an option. So I can come back over here and make that smaller. And this one maybe doesn't work as well, but it might work for some things. It might work for maybe a truck, because then we're featuring this a little bit more. So again, it's just like Lego building blocks, and even though this is not in a box, it is an implied square. So if I were to, let's say, draw a square underneath this, it's an implied square. So that's going to be a lot easier to design things around. If I throw that underneath, that's going to be a lot easier to design things around than anything else. Okay, so anyway, those are my tips for creating a logo design. Keep it simple. It should work on white. It should work on dark. If I wanted this to work on dark, let's say this was a dark charcoal gray, then I'm going to have to come back in here and change a couple of things about this. And maybe this outside area is my lighter gray, and this inside area is the darker gray, and then come back out. So maybe we could do something like that. So it should work on white, it should work on dark, it should work in Lego blocks, the font should make sense for what we're doing, and it should be a simplified image so that it can be reproduced on many different things.